Okay, the next topic that I want to go on to in terms of composition is looking at center focus. And you can think of this as leading the eye to the middle of the frame to create balance and kind of a harmony within your frame. And let's have a look at a couple of examples to give you an idea of what I mean with this concept. Again, these are, of course, images that come from the story Jakarta, the Sinking City. And this particular image was one I made of this man who was cleaning rubbish, cleaning trash from one of the rivers in central Jakarta. And you can see quite clearly that he is the central focus of this image. We're not using the rule of thirds here. He is in the center of the frame, and it works because, well, there's a couple of things that make this image work. Mainly that moment that I've been able to capture in this frame where he's throwing that rubbish off to the side is it's almost like a ballet movement. So it's almost like a dance as he throws his arm to the side, and I've managed to capture that moment. So that's what makes this image work. But it's also with the center focus, you can see to the left and the right of the image. I framed him within, I framed him within these tree branches that were coming in from either side of him. So you can see the tree branches on the left and the tree branches on the right create this kind of layering effect whereby he is in the middle, but he's kind of framed on either side by these tree branches. So that creates that balance that I talked about. And that's something that you need to think about if you want to use the center focus compositional technique. It's really important to keep in mind what is happening on either side of your central focus. Now, if we look at this image, again, we've got the clear central focus of the man in the middle. And he was, if I remember rightly, fishing or perhaps collecting trash again from the river. But again, if we think about this idea of the central focus needing that balance on either side, if you look at the left side and the right side, we have that balance because we've got two different things happening on either side. On the left, we've got the man with his child on the bike, and on the right-hand side, we've got the building and also to a certain extent the reflection. So we've got a few different things happening here. We've got the central focus drawing your attention to the man, but also this image really works and is really unique because of the balance. But my favorite thing about this photo is the man with his child riding past on the bike. And so, in this type of situation, I've obviously got my attention focused on that central subject, but I'm also always thinking about my peripheral vision. And I'm thinking about what is happening on the other side of my subject. And how can I use what is happening on those other sides to make an interesting composition? And that's what I did for this scene. And I was quite happy with the result. Also in this image, you can see that our central focus is on that circular plate in the middle. We're using a strong shape. It's a pink plate. So again, draws your attention right into what this girl is eating on her plate. And again, either side of that central focus is a balance. The way, quite kind of strange way in which her legs are positioned create this balance through the frame. And we've actually got those strong shapes. We've got the shape of the pink plate, but we've also got this rectangular plate shape that's kind of framing her as well. So we've got the central focus, we've got the strong shapes, and it's almost an interesting moment as well, because we're not quite sure what's happening in the scene, and we're not sure about the situation of this young girl. It's creating a bit of a question in our mind about the issue, about the girl, about what's happening, how this relates to the context of the story. And again, we're using composition as a way to pique the interest of our viewer, to get them to think about these type of things. That's the driving force behind much of my work. Here's another example of the central focus where the man is looking down this really heavily polluted river in central Jakarta. We've got the central focus drawing your attention to the back of the man's head, but because he's turned away looking down the river, you can see that it kind of draws your attention into the photograph as well and takes you down further into the image. So if you want to use central focus for your pictures, then remember to position your main subject in the center of the frame for the maximum attention of the viewer's focus. But always be aware of your peripheral vision and what is happening on either side of the central subject. And think about, is the image balanced? And if it isn't, maybe you need to change your position. Maybe you need to wait for something to happen on either side of your central subject. Maybe you need to be more patient and wait for things to happen. All of these things you need to consider if you want to use the central focus effectively for your compositions. Okay, I had a question on YouTube. It was on one of my community posts on YouTube. So thanks to all the community who subscribed to my channel. I assume if you're watching this, you probably subscribed already, but if you haven't, if you're watching this on the replay, please do subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate all the support so far. This is a question from Jay Clifford, who said, how do you know when to use the rule of thirds and when to use center focus? Well, as I mentioned before, Jay, really, A, it depends on the situation, but B, again, there's no hard and fast rule. I can't tell you that if you're in this situation, you must use this technique, because photography doesn't really work like that. If it did, all of our photographs would become very formulaic and all very, very similar. So, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the live stream, if you're unsure, try both. If you're unsure, if you have a situation and you have time in that situation, try your framing using the rule of thirds, and then take another picture using the central focus. And then later on, when you're editing, have a look at the images and see which one works best. Because I often do that in situations where I have a little bit of time. I play around with different compositions. There's this kind of myth really with professional photography that professional photographers will go into a situation, immediately know which composition technique to use, and take one or two pictures, and then that's it. We have a National Geographic level photograph. But it's not the truth. It's not the truth. It's not like that. In many of these situations, and in many of these situations that I've shown you, these photographs that I've shared with you in the live stream, those situations, I'm taking lots of different pictures and I'm experimenting with lots of different angles. I'm experimenting with different compositions. And afterwards, after I go back to my computer, when I'm back in my hotel or back at home and I'm editing, I'm looking through all of those pictures and I'm choosing the best one. And I'm just showing that best image to you. And that's the editing process that professionals use. So the main point I'm trying to make is that when you're in those situations, play with your compositions. Try the rule of thirds, try center focus, try maybe a combination of the rule of thirds with a frame in a frame, central focus with a frame in a frame. And then afterwards, see which one works best, pick the best one, and don't be afraid to leave out those other ones that didn't work. Because to be honest, no one ever sees 99% of professional photographers' photos, because editing is equally as important as actually taking the pictures, because you're seeking out and finding just the best image and just showing those best images. And again, that is another topic that I'm going to cover in future YouTube videos. So make sure you look out for those too. Okay, let's dive quickly into the comments before we get into one of the last composition techniques for this live stream. Let's see. I'm just going to have a look at these comments and choose one. Okay, we've got Dante, who is tuning in from Bahal in the Philippines. Full disclosure, Dante is also on my mentorship program at the moment. He's doing some really interesting work on environmental issues in the Philippines. So Dante, thank you for tuning in. Great to see you here. And we were chatting just the other day on one of his mentorship calls. Again, if you're interested in the mentorship program, click the link in the description below to learn more about how I might be able to help you. Okay, and we've got one more comment here from Paul. I see several of your sinking city images aren't level. How helpful a technique is this compositionally, and do editors ever grumble about it? Yeah, this is a comment that I actually get on a lot on my images, and it's quite surprising, really, because it seems that people have a thing about images that don't have level horizons. I never knew it was something that irked people so much. I don't use it too much anymore. I think I used to use it a lot very early in my career, when I was first starting photography. I was a little bit more loose, a little bit more free with my compositions, and so I used to tilt the camera, use the kind of the Dutch angle, they used to call it, where you're tilting the horizons. But I don't actually use it too much anymore, but it does creep into my work sometimes. And to be honest, in professional photography, I don't think it's a big issue. I've never had an editor turn around to me and say, "We can't use this image because you tilted the horizon." As you can see, some of my images that have tilted horizons have appeared with National Geographic and other leading publications, because I don't think it's really an issue. Photo editors aren't there to only pick the technically perfect pictures. In my field, at least as a photojournalist, the most important thing is the story of the image. Did you capture something important? Did you capture something, excuse me, did you capture something emotional that helped tell the story? That is far more important than whether my horizon is perfectly level. So it's something that I see a little bit more of an issue with amateur photographers, but I don't think you should get hung up on it too much, especially if you're shooting documentary photography, street photography, kind of this photojournalism, reportage style photography, where you've got much more freedom to be more relaxed with your compositions and experimental with your compositions. Remember, there are no rules, really. These are all just guidelines, as I mentioned before. But great question. I'm glad you brought that one up.